Hello, welcome to Digital Farm TV Rural News. I'm Andy Walker. Last year, a record 23 people died in all-terrain vehicle accidents nationally. 10 have been killed this year, including a 13-year-old girl near Wollongong, New South Wales this month. The federal government is now poised to make ATV rollover protection mandatory. Workplace Relations Minister Bill Shorten told Radio 2GB that the government would intervene if manufacturers did not do something about the unacceptably high ATV death rates and injuries. Manufacturers have been seen to be stonewalling on reform, arguing that rollover bars actually heightened rider death and injury risk. Mr Shorten said the status quo was not working. People were still dying and more still were being injured. If the industry didn't act, the government would, he said. Australian consumers are now demanding red meat more often while swapping 3 courses for 2. Cafe chains are on the increase while independent cafe numbers are falling. Retailers are now cooking from scratch more often to save on cost, as 2011 again proved to be a difficult year for the food service industry. These are the key takeaways from the BIS Shrapnel Australian Food Service Market 2012 report released last week. While consumers were still dining out, they were doing so less often and they were spending less. In Australia declined by 1%, driven largely by a 1.1% decline in commercial outlets. Fast food chains grew by 3.8% in 2011, but a further decline in independent fast food outlets, combined with a significant decline in snack food chain outlets, led to an overall fall in the quick service restaurant sector of 1.7%. Restaurant numbers declined by 2.6% last year, and function caterer numbers declined by 7.3%. The Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority is investigating reports that a batch of a widely used herbicide, trifluralin, was making Western Australian farmers nauseous and ill. Trifluralin is widely used for pre-emergent control of weeds in broadacre crops, including wheat, barley and canola. The APVMA had been alerted to the health concerns by the Western Australian Farmers Federation in late June, and had received a number of individual complaints dating back to March. The authority had made extensive inquiries regarding allegations that the problem batch was unregistered, discoloured and odorous, according to APVMA Compliance Manager Dr Jan Claver. The authority wanted to ensure it heard from anyone who believed he or she had been adversely affected by trifluralin. The APVMA has an adverse experience reporting program that can be accessed on its website at www.apvma.gov.au. The federal government last week launched a National Food Plan Green Paper containing national policy options for Australia's food future. The program was announced by Federal Agriculture Minister Senator Joe Ludwig. The National Food Plan Green Paper will seek widespread views on food policy challenges, including food security, market access, supply chain relationships, research and development, infrastructure, land use and skills. National Farmers Federation President Jock Laurie said the proposed plan had the potential to address many farm sector concerns about future food production and availability. The NFF was pleased to see that the Green Paper had identified the importance of research, development and innovation to sustainable food production in Australia. Australian Wool Innovation Associated wool growers have trained 2,190 shearers and wool handlers during the past 12 months, according to the R&D and Wool Marketing Organisation. AWI had invested $1.1 million in education and training last financial year, as well as promoting industry careers through shearing competitions and shows. Program Manager Shearing and Industry Development Ian Evans said AWI funding played an important role in supporting registered training organisations. AWI worked with around 9 training groups nationally to leverage valuable government funding, he said. While there was a natural focus on in-shed training, AWI needed to work to retain so many shearers and wool handling crew as it could. Ian Evans said AWI was enhancing the image of shearing by supporting competitions at all levels and sponsoring shearing demonstrations and vocational training in high schools. Back in the USA, according to global financial analysts Bloomberg, a worst-in-a-generation drought from Indiana through Arkansas to California is damaging crops and rural economies and threatening to drive food prices to record levels. Agriculture, though a small part of the $15.5 trillion US economy, had been one of its most resilient industries during the past 3 years as the country struggled to recover from recession. The US Department for Agriculture said this drought was the worst since 1988 and had cut its forecast from the corn harvest for the year by 12%. The USDA said more than 1,000 counties in 26 states were natural disaster areas, the largest such declaration ever. The drought would have regional, national and even international impacts, according to economics at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, Ernie Goss.